This episode is brought to you by CertFuel. They've got a full securities industry essentials course with adaptive study quizzes, smart flashcards, and unlimited practice exams weighted just like the real thing. Check it out at certfuel.com. Okay, let's unpack this. Today, you and I are going to master employee conduct and reportable events for the SIE exam.
Yeah, and this is a big one. It's basically your professional survival guide for the industry.
Right. You know, usually when we talk about a person's permanent record, there's this shared expectation of, like, a schoolyard myth. Think back to when you were in third grade.
Oh, the classic principal's office threat.
Exactly. The principal catches you throwing a snowball, looks you dead in the eye, and tells you what's going on your permanent record. And as a kid, you picture this dusty, yellowed manila folder locked in a vault somewhere, just waiting to ruin your life when you're 30.
It's a brilliant psychological deterrent for an 8-year-old. I mean, it's a totally abstract threat designed just to keep you in line.
Yeah, because as you grow up, you realize the vault doesn't exist. The manila folder was thrown in the shredder the day you graduated. But then you step into the world of the securities industry. You decide you want to be a registered financial professional. And suddenly, that ghost story becomes terrifyingly real.
It absolutely does. The permanent record is very real. It's not in a dusty vault, though. It's highly digitized, it's mercilessly public, and it is meticulously maintained by the federal government and regulators.
Right. It's the absolute definition of a transparent professional history.
Yeah.
Everything you do, every written complaint, every side business you start, your personal financial stumbles, it's all documented and out in the open.
Yeah. Ready to be scrutinized by compliance departments, regulators, and honestly, anyone with a smartphone who knows how to use broker check.
And navigating that reality is exactly what we're going to do on this deep dive. Because if we look at why this matters for your immediate goal, listener passing the SIE exam, this topic, is about 9% of your test.
Right. But from a practical, real-world standpoint, these are the life and death rules of a career in finance. We are breaking down the exact regulations that prevent securities professionals from getting hit with massive fines, getting suspended, or just being permanently barred from the industry.
We are talking about keeping your career alive. Now, I know that staring at dry regulatory text can make your eyes glaze over, especially for my ADHD brain.
Yeah.
So we are going to make this visceral.
I love that approach. Context is everything.
Exactly. We're going to rely on a recurring cast of fictional characters to act out these rules in real time. We need to see the rules broken to understand why they exist. So let me introduce the stars of today's deep dive.
Oh.
First up, we have Broker Barry.
Broker Barry.
Yeah, Barry is the golden retriever of finance. He's enthusiastic, he means well, he works incredibly hard. But Barry is chronically prone to stepping on regulatory landmines because he acts first and reads the compliance manual second.
I have audited so many firms in my career, and I can assure you, every single branch office has a Broker Barry. High energy, fantastic at sales, and an absolute nightmare for the legal department.
Which brings us to our second character manager, Monica. She is Barry's supervising principal. Monica is perpetually stressed out. She basically drinks Pepto-Bismol like it's water. She's constantly refreshing her email, waiting for a disaster. And her full-time job is trying to keep Barry out of federal prison.
A very relatable position for many compliance officers, honestly.
Definitely. Then we have client Carl. Carl is Barry's best customer. He's wealthy, retired, but he's very easily confused by modern financial markets. That confusion makes him vulnerable, which is exactly why regulators build a fortress of rules to protect people like him.
Carl represents the entire retail investing public.
Right. And finally, we have Mayor Mike. He's a slick local politician, always looking to shake hands and raise campaign funds.
You have assembled the perfect cast for a complete compliance catastrophe.
That is the goal. So I'm asking you, the listener, right now, put on your compliance hat. Are you ready to keep Broker Barry out of FINRA jail? Let's get into it. So where do we start?
To understand how to protect Barry, we have to start at the very beginning of his career. We need to look at the paperwork that establishes his identity in the industry, the bookends of a registered rep's life.
The forms, Form U4 and Form U5. Listener, if you're preparing for the SIE, these two forms need to be etched into your memory. But before we get into what's on them, who is actually demanding these forms, we throw around acronyms like FINRA and the SEC. Who holds the power?
That's a crucial foundation. So the SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission, is the top-tier federal government agency. They are the ultimate authority.
Like the Supreme Court of Finance.
Exactly. But the SEC doesn't have the manpower to micromanage every single stockbroker in America, so they delegate day-to-day oversight to FINRA, the Financial Industry Regulatory Authority.
Got it.
FINRA is an SRO, a self-regulatory organization. They're a private corporation that acts as the frontline police force operating under the SEC's umbrella.
Okay, so FINRA is the beat cop, SEC is the Supreme Court. So when Broker Barry gets hired by manager Monica's firm, FINRA demands to know exactly who he is. And that is where Form U-4 comes in.
Correct. Form U-4 is the Uniform Application for Securities Industry Registration. It's the HELLO form. You cannot legally conduct any securities business until this form is filed by your firm and your registration is approved.
And this form isn't just a resume, right? It's not just, hey, here's my college degree. I like to think of the U-4 as a living compliance credit score.
That's a great way to put it. It tracks everything. 10-year employment history, 5-year residential history.
But the part that shocks new people is the financial disclosures. FINRA wants to know about bankruptcies, unsatisfied tax liens, civil judgments. And I have to push back on this on behalf of Barry. Let's say Barry goes through a terrible divorce, his finances are wrecked, and the IRS slaps a $50,000 lien on his house. Why is that FINRA's business?
It feels invasive, I know.
Right. His personal checking account has nothing to do with his ability to pick good mutual funds for client Carl. Why do they care?
They care because of the psychology of financial desperation. Regulators view the world through the lens of risk assessment. They look at what criminologists call the fraud triangle.
Okay, break that down for me. The fraud triangle.
The 3 points are opportunity, rationalization, and pressure. As a broker, Barry already has the opportunity. He has access to client Carl's accounts.
Check.
He can easily rationalize stealing by telling himself, I'm just borrowing this money, I'll put it back when my bonus hits.
Right.
But what he normally lacks is the pressure to actually execute the crime. If Barry suddenly owes the IRS $50,000 and the government is threatening to seize his assets, he is under crushing personal financial pressure.
Oh, wow. I see where this is going.
Yeah. Right in front of him is client Carl's $2 million liquid portfolio. The temptation to quietly misappropriate some of Carl's funds increases exponentially. FINRA demands that financial distress be disclosed on the U-4 so manager Monica can put Barry under heightened supervision.
Wow. Okay, that makes total sense. They aren't judging him for being poor. They are monitoring him for being a flight risk. They want to know when a broker is cornered.
Exactly.
Now, listener, I want you to pay very close attention here. This is where the exam tries to get you. The test writers love to exploit the gap between normal criminal law and FINRA rules. Let's talk about criminal disclosures on the U-4.
This is a massive trap.
Let's run a scenario. Broker Barry goes out on a Saturday night to a local bar. He has a few too many drinks, gets into a shouting match, and it escalates into a physical fight. The police show up, and Barry gets arrested and formally charged with felony assault.
A terrible night for Barry.
The worst. So the next morning, Barry bails himself out and hires an incredible defense attorney. The attorney reviews the security footage and tells Barry, look, the other guy threw the first punch. This is self-defense. We are going to take this to trial in 6 months, and we're going to beat this charge entirely.
Sounds promising for him legally.
Right. So Barry takes a deep breath and thinks, okay, I'm innocent until proven guilty, and I haven't been convicted of a single crime. Therefore, I don't need to tell manager Monica about this, and I definitely don't need to put this on my U-4.
And by making that assumption, Barry would be committing a catastrophic regulatory violation.
Wait, really? But what about the presumption of innocence? You can be charged with a crime completely erroneously? Why should a false charge ruin his public record?
Because FINRA's primary mandate is the protection of the investing public, not the protection of broker Barry's reputation. The standard for the U-4 is explicit. You must disclose any felony charges or any misdemeanor charges that involve finance, theft, or securities fraud.
So just the charge?
Just the charge. The moment Barry is formally charged, whether by arrest, indictment, or information, the regulatory clock starts ticking. He has an immediate obligation to notify manager Monica, and the firm has 30 days to update his Form U-4 with FINRA.
So the charge is the trigger. Not the conviction, not the plea deal, the charge. Listener, if the test gives you a scenario where a broker is waiting for their court date to disclose an event, You need to recognize instantly that the broker is violating the rules.
Precisely. FINRA needs to know that a registered rep is facing a serious legal battle right now, because that, again, introduces immense pressure. If Barry beats the case in 6 months, his U4 will be updated to reflect that the charges were dismissed. But the initial charge must be reported.
Okay, so that is the U4, the hello form that acts as this living document. Let's look at the other bookend, the goodbye form, Form U5.
Form U5, the uniform termination notice.
Let's say Barry's Saturday night bar fight makes the local news. Manager Monica sees it. She realizes Barry hid the arrest, and she has finally had enough. She calls him into her office on Monday and fires him. What is the mechanical process that happens next?
When a registered person separates from a member firm, and it does not matter if they quit, retire naturally, get laid off, or get fired for cause, the firm is legally obligated to file Form U5. And Manager Monica is on a very strict timeline here.
What's the timeline?
The firm has exactly 30 days from the effective date of Barry's termination to file that U5 with FINRA. And they have to provide a copy directly to Barry within that same 30-day window.
30 days. Why 30 days? Why not just file it the same afternoon he gets fired?
Because the U5 is a deeply consequential legal document. The firm needs time to ensure accuracy. It's not just a checkbox that says Barry is gone. The U5 demands a specific, detailed reason for the termination.
Right, Monica has to conduct a mini investigation.
Exactly. Did he leave voluntarily? Was he discharged for violating firm policy? Was he permitted to resign because he knew an internal fraud investigation was about to drop the hammer on him? The firm has to get this narrative right because FINRA reads these forms carefully.
Let's explore a loophole that I know every guilty broker tries to use. Barry is sitting in Monica's office. He knows he hid the felony charge. Before Monica can actually say the words, "You're fired," Barry stands up, slams his badge on the desk and yells, "You can't fire me, I quit."
Ah, the classic evasion tactic.
He thinks he just pulled a genius move. By voluntarily resigning, he assumes Monica has to check the voluntary box on the U5, and he can just walk away cleanly. Does that work?
It absolutely does not work. Regulators anticipated this exact tactic decades ago. Form U5 has a very specific termination category designed just for this scenario. It's called permitted to resign.
Oh, wow. Permitted to resign.
Yes. If Barry quits while he is the subject of an internal review or an investigation into rule violations, Monica is legally required to select that category and detail the ongoing investigation. The dark cloud follows him regardless of who said we're done first.
You can't outrun the paperwork. But what about FINRA's actual authority over him? If he quits, isn't he just a regular private citizen? Can't he just tell FINRA to leave him alone?
No. And listener, this is a vital concept for the exam. FINRA retains regulatory jurisdiction over an individual for a full 2 years after their termination.
2 years.
2 full years. You cannot just quit on a Friday afternoon to escape a FINRA subpoena on Monday morning. If they find out Barry was stealing from client Carl, they can still investigate him, compel him to testify, fine him, and bar him for 24 months after that U5 is filed.
I love the mechanics of that. It's like a trailing liability tale. You can check out anytime you like, but FINRA can still audit your life for 2 years. What if something new comes to light after he leaves? Like client Carl realizes 2 months later that Barry was siphoning money out of his account. Is Monica's firm off the hook?
They are absolutely not off the hook. This is known as the continuing obligation rule. Even though Barry is gone, Manager Monica is required to go back and amend Barry's Form U5 with this newly discovered allegation of theft.
Within 30 days, I'm guessing.
You guessed it, within 30 days of learning about the new complaint. The U5 acts as an ongoing autopsy report of the broker's time at the firm.
Okay, we've established these forms. Power broker check the public database. So let's talk about FINRA Rule 1122. Misleading information. What happens if the data on the U4 or U5 is a lie? Or it's just incomplete?
In the eyes of FINRA, an omission of a material fact is treated with the exact same severity as a bold-faced lie. If you intentionally forget to mention a bankruptcy from 3 years ago, regulators view that as a deliberate fabrication.
And the exam loves the worst-case scenario here. If the test describes a misstatement or omission as willful, meaning the broker consciously chose to hide it, that triggers something called statutory disqualification.
Statutory disqualification is the heaviest hammer in the regulatory toolbox. It effectively means you are immediately and completely disqualified from associating with any member firm in any capacity.
So you can't even answer the phones at a brokerage firm. You are exiled. Let's run a scenario to illustrate how dangerous this is. Broker Barry crosses the line. He executes an unauthorized trade in client Carl's account, and loses a massive amount of money.
A terrible violation.
Monica calls him in and says, I am discharging you for cause. I am filing the U-5 today. Barry breaks down. He says, Monica, please, I have a mortgage. If you put discharge for cause on my public U-5, my career is over. Just do me this one favor. Check the voluntary resignation box.
He's begging for his professional life.
Monica is human. She knows his kids. She feels pity. So she agrees. She files the U-5, checks voluntary resignation, and leaves the unauthorized trading completely off the form. Listener, take a beat. Who gets in trouble here?
They both do. And the fallout for manager Monica will likely be worse than the fallout for Barry. By checking that box, she just formally filed false and misleading information with a federal regulator.
It doesn't matter that she was being nice.
Not at all. The entire framework relies on the absolute accuracy of the Form U-5. By falsifying it, Monica is actively participating in a cover-up. She is releasing a dangerous broker back into the wild to harm other clients. She becomes an accessory to his future rule violations.
And Adara will sanction both of them. And firms have an independent duty to verify facts, right? When Barry first filled out his U-4, he checked the box saying he never filed for bankruptcy. Monica can't just take his word for it.
Exactly. Trust but verify, except in compliance, it's just verify. Don't trust anyone. Monica must pull his credit report, run a background check, search court records. If she blindly trusts him and FINRA discovers the bankruptcy later, the firm is liable for failing to adequately investigate their own employee.
The firm has to be its own private detective agency. Okay, so that's the paperwork. Let's transition into the events that actually create the stains on that paperwork. Section 2, customer complaints, or dealing with a Karen in writing.
Handling customer grievances is an inevitable reality. You manage life savings, emotions run high. But how a firm handles these is strictly governed.
Let's start with the baseline requirement, record keeping. Firms have to keep a written record of all customer complaints at the Office of Supervisory Jurisdiction for 4 years. Listener, 4 years, highly testable. But here's a pattern interrupt for you. What counts as a written complaint? Are you picturing a formal typed letter delivered by certified mail?
That is the image most people have, and it's a massive trap. The regulatory definition of a written complaint has evolved with technology. It is incredibly broad.
Texts count. Social media DMs count. Emails count. If client Carl is sitting on his couch at 11:30 p.m. on a Friday, sees a stock tanked, and texts Barry, "You lost my money, you're a terrible broker, I want my funds back," the clock just started. That text is a formal, written customer complaint.
It does not matter how informal the medium is or how core the grammar is. If it's in writing and it expresses a grievance, the firm must log it and preserve it for 4 years. If Barry deletes that text and doesn't tell Monica, he is committing a severe violation.
Every angry text goes into the permanent file. But do all of these get instantly reported to FINRA and put on Barry's public broker check profile?
No. Firms submit quarterly statistical summaries. But for an individual complaint to trigger an immediate mandatory disclosure on the U-4 or U-5, it has to hit a specific financial threshold.
The magic number. Listener, burn this into your brain. The threshold is $5,000. If a written complaint alleges damages of $5,000 or more, it must be reported. But here's the twist. This is a giant exam trap. The reporting requirement is based entirely on the allegation, not the reality. Merit does not matter.
This is a concept financial professionals genuinely struggle to accept because it feels inherently unfair.
Let's run a ridiculous hypothetical. Barry manages Carl's account perfectly. The portfolio is up. But Carl is becoming delusional. Carl emails Monica and says, "Broker Barry used CIA mind control raise to force me to sell my lucky gold mining stock. Because of his telepathy, I lost $5,001. I demand compensation."
A completely frivolous, unhinged complaint.
Exactly. Monica checks the logs. Barry hasn't traded gold mining stock in 3 years. It is mathematically and logically impossible. Does Monica still have to report this to FINRA and put it on Barry's permanent record?
Yes, she absolutely does.
But why? Why ruin his record over CIA mind control raise?
Because FINRA operates on a strict policy, they do not allow member firms to act as the judge and jury regarding the validity of a complaint. If FINRA allowed firms to decide which complaints had merit, every compliance department would just hide legitimate fraud by saying, "Oh, we investigated ourselves and found it lacked merit."
Right. Nothing would ever get reported.
Exactly. So the rule must be black and white. If it's in writing and alleges $5,000 or more, it goes on the record. Period. Now, Barry can add a written comment to his broker check profile explaining the absurdity of the mind control ray allegation so anyone reading it will understand. But the disclosure must happen.
No foxes guarding the hen house. I get it. Now, what about legitimate disputes? Let's do a side-by-side comparison of the two main dispute resolution paths, arbitration and mediation. Listener, you need to know the difference.
Let's start with arbitration.
Huh?
This is the mandatory mechanism if you sign a pre-dispute arbitration agreement when opening an account. Think of arbitration as hiring a private court system. It's formal, lawyers, evidence, witnesses. But instead of a judge, it's a panel of arbitrators, and the key word is binding.
Binding. It is a financial escape room. Once you walk in, whatever they decide is absolute law. If they say Barry owes Carl 50 grand, Barry has to write the check within 30 days. And there's no appeals process, right? Barry can't say, I want a do-over in federal court.
Correct. Unless Barry can prove extreme documented fraud by the arbitrators themselves, which is incredibly rare, the decision is final. It's designed to be faster and cheaper than civil court, but you lose the right to appeal.
Okay, so arbitration is the binding private judge. What about mediation?
Mediation is entirely different. It's a voluntary, non-binding process that usually happens before arbitration to try and save time and legal fees. Think of a mediator as a financial marriage counselor or a diplomat. They don't have the power to force anyone to do anything.
I picture shuttle diplomacy, Carl in room A furious, Barry in room B defensive, the mediator walking back and forth saying, look, Carl, arbitration will cost you 20 grand in legal fees. Barry is willing to settle right now for 15 grand. What do you say?
That is exactly how it works. The mediator facilitates communication and tries to find common ground. If it's successful, they sign a settlement. If it fails, if Carl refuses to budge, either party can simply walk away and proceed to formal arbitration. Mediation is non-binding.
Binding private judge versus non-binding marriage counselor. Clear distinction. Now, the exam loves to test the limitations of that arbitration agreement. Does signing that agreement strip Carl of his right to call the SEC if he thinks he's being robbed?
Absolutely not. An arbitration agreement dictates how financial restitution is handled. It does not block a client's right to complain to regulatory authorities. A firm cannot force a client to waive their right to blow the whistle on illegal activity.
You can't force a client to keep your secrets. If Carl thinks it's a Ponzi scheme, he calls the SEC immediately, and the criminal investigation runs parallel to the arbitration process. Perfect. Now, manager Monica is not supposed to just wait for angry emails. She has to be proactive. Let's talk about red flags.
FINRA rules require a rigorous supervisory system. The legal standard for Monica is not just what she actually knew, but what she should have known. If obvious warning signs are flashing and she ignores them, the firm is strictly liable for failure to supervise.
Let's do a role play, listener. Step into Monica's shoes. You see that broker Barry is your hardest worker, 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. every day. And it's been 3 full years, and he has not taken a single day of vacation. Not a long weekend, not a sick day. Are you printing out an Employee of the Month certificate, or are you launching an aggressive internal audit? Take a second. Think about the mechanics.
To a layman, Barry looks like a model employee. To a compliance officer, Barry looks like a massive 5-alarm fire. Refusing to take a vacation is a classic red flag for ongoing financial fraud.
Why? Because normal people like the beach. In financial fraud, a vacation is a fatal vulnerability.
Exactly. Fraud requires constant daily maintenance. The broker has to constantly spin the plates to keep the scheme hidden, intercepting mail, executing complex trades to hide a deficit. If Barry goes to Hawaii for 2 weeks, he loses control. A covering broker answers a phone call from Carl, opens Barry's books, and instantly realizes $200,000 is missing.
The plates crash to the floor. This is why firms have mandatory vacation policies, right?
Yeah.
Usually 2 consecutive weeks where their building access and trading logins are completely deactivated.
Yes. The entire purpose is to force the broker away so a supervisor can quietly review their accounts. So, fighting a vacation is a huge red flag. Other red flags include a sudden spike in trading volume churning to generate commissions, or using personal cell phones or encrypted apps like WhatsApp to talk to clients.
Because if they moved off the firm's officially archived email system, they are trying to hide something. If Monica sees these and does nothing, I didn't know is not a legal defense. Okay, so Monica watches him in the office. What about when he unplugs on the weekend? Section 3, the side hustle dilemma, OBAs versus selling away.
This is consistently one of the most highly tested areas on the SIE exam.
To understand this, listener, we're doing a highly structured side-by-side battle. Left side of your page, outside business activities or OBAs. Right side, private securities transactions or selling away. Let's start with OBAs.
An OBA is any business activity outside the firm that does not involve securities, non-securities work.
Like Barry teaching a yoga class on Saturdays, or attending bar on Thursdays, or serving on the paid board of the local water authority, What is the regulatory requirement for these?
The registered person must provide prior written notice to their employing firm before engaging in the activity.
Prior written notice. Notice, not approval. His initial obligation is simply to inform the firm, hey, Monica, I'm teaching yoga. But the crucial nuance is once Monica receives that notice, the firm can restrict it or prohibit it.
Right, and you have to understand why a Wall Street firm cares about Barry teaching downward dog. They are looking for 3 threats. First, conflict of interest. If he's on the Water Authority board and recommends their municipal bonds to Carl, that's a massive conflict.
Huge conflict.
Second, public confusion. If Barry wears his brokerage firm polo shirt while tending bar, a drunk patron might think the bar is affiliated with the investment firm. Third, interference with his day job. If he's bartending until 3 a.m., is he going to make a catastrophic typo on a $1 million trade ticket the next morning?
That makes perfect sense. What if his side hustle is digital? He starts a YouTube fitness channel and gets $500 a month in ad revenue. OBA.
Yes. Because he receives compensation, he must provide prior written notice.
Okay, what doesn't count as an OBA? Passive investments, highly testable. If Barry buys a duplex to collect rental income, he's a passive owner. No notice needed. If he buys Apple stock in his personal account, passive investor. No notice. Now let's look at the right side of the page. Selling away. If OBAs are a headache, selling away is Siren's ultimate nightmare.
It is the unforgivable sin. A private securities transaction is a securities deal that takes place entirely outside the regular scope of the broker's employment.
Let's use our characters. Client, Carl's nephew, starts a private tech startup. Carl wants to invest 50 grand. Barry says, let me help you structure that. Barry does the paperwork for Carl off the books, using his personal email. Monica has no idea. This is selling away. Why is this so dangerous?
Because of the liability. Carl assumes that because Barry works for a massive firm, any investment Barry facilitates has been thoroughly vetted by their legal department. But the firm hasn't vetted anything. If the startup is a scam and Carl loses 50 grand, Carl's going to sue Barry's multi-billion-dollar firm for failing to supervise their employee. Selling away forces the firm to take on massive legal liability for products they never approved.
So how can Barry do this legitimately? It all comes down to one highly testable concept. Compensation. Does Barry get paid?
There are 2 paths based on compensation. Path 1. If Barry receives absolutely no compensation, he's doing it as a free favor, the requirement is lighter. He must provide prior written notice detailing the transaction and his role. The firm can still say no, but the base requirement is just notice.
Just notice, like an OBA. But what if Barry does get compensation? Path 2.
If compensation is involved, the regulatory burden increases exponentially. Barry must provide prior written notice, PLUS. He must receive explicit written approval from the firm. PLUS, the firm, must record the transaction on its official books and supervise the deal exactly as if it were their own proprietary product.
Notice, approval, and supervision. The firm basically has to adopt the transaction. Now, listener, lean in. This is the exam trap.
Yeah.
What is compensation? If you're picturing a W-2 paycheck or a cash wire transfer, you're thinking too small.
The regulatory definition of compensation is aggressively broad. It includes any indirect benefits, future promises, or physical items of value.
Let's run the scenario. Barry helps Carl for free. Barry thinks he's on path 1. Just notice required. A week later, Carl is so grateful he buys Barry a $3,000 set of Callaway golf clubs as a thank you gift. I would argue, on Barry's behalf, those are just a personal gift between friends. It wasn't a contractual fee.
Regulators do not care about the emotional intent. The moment Barry accepts those golf clubs, he has received indirect compensation for facilitating a securities transaction.
A trap snaps shut.
Yes. By accepting the clubs, Barry instantly transforms the event into a compensated transaction. He retroactively violated the rule because he didn't get prior written approval, and the firm isn't supervising the deal. Even if Carl reimburses Barry $50 for gas money driving to the nephew's office, expense reimbursement is compensation. This strict interpretation is why selling away is a primary reason brokers get barred.
Notice for OBAs. Notice for uncompensated selling away. Notice, approval, and supervision for compensated selling away. Got it. Let's pivot slightly. Section 4, the art of schmoozing, gifts, gratuities, and non-cash comp.
The securities industry is a relationship business, but FINRA imposes strict limits to prevent bribery and conflicts of interest.
Let's start with the $100 rule. A registered person cannot give or receive a gift exceeding $100 per person per year in aggregate if it's related to the business. I have to complain about this. With inflation, $100 barely covers 2 decent steaks. How do you build relationships with ultra-high net worth clients with such an archaic limit?
The FINRA's stance is unyielding. The rule isn't designed to reflect the cost of luxury goods. It establishes a threshold where a gesture of goodwill transitions into the appearance of impropriety. They want investment decisions based on objective merit, not because a broker bought a client a Rolex.
Okay, fine. Kill the bribery instinct. The word aggregate is key here. If Barry sends Carl a $60 bottle of wine in March and a $50 fruit basket in December, he's at $110. He violated the rule. How does Monica enforce this?
Compliance departments use sophisticated expense tracking software. It automatically aggregates the dollar amounts per client. If Barry tries to expense that $50 fruit basket, the system flags it, blocks it, and alerts Monica.
What counts toward the limit? Cash. Amazon gift cards.
Cash and cash equivalents always count. A $50 gift card is exactly the same as handing the client a $50 bill.
What about cheap promotional items? Branded pens, coffee mugs, stress balls.
Those are exempt. Reminder advertising of nominal value does not count. A $2 plastic pen is not going to corrupt a client's investment logic.
And personal life events. Barry's childhood best friend gets married. Barry buys him a $500 espresso machine off the registry. But the friend also has a small IRA managed by Barry. Did Barry violate the rule?
No. There's an exemption for personal life events where a pre-existing recognized personal relationship exists. As long as it's personal, paid for by the broker personally, and not expense to the firm, it's exempt.
Okay, now for the most mechanically complex nuance in this section. The presence test for business entertainment. Listener, direct question for you. Barry wants to treat Carl. He buys 2 front-row Taylor Swift tickets for $500 each. $1,000 total. Barry meets Carl outside the stadium, hands him the 2 tickets, says have a great time, and then Barry walks to his car and drives home. Is this allowed? Take a beat. Think about the $100 rule.
It is absolutely not allowed. It is a severe violation.
Because of the presence test. Distinguish between a gift and business entertainment.
The defining factor is physical presence. If Barry hands Carl the tickets and does not attend the event with him, those tickets are legally classified as a gift. And since it's worth $1,000, it spectacularly violates the $100 annual limit.
But what if Barry changes his mind? He keeps 1 ticket and walks into the stadium with Carl. He sits in the front row and screams the lyrics to Cruel Summer for 3 hours right next to his client. Then what is it?
The moment Barry walks through the turnstiles with the client, the tickets magically transform from a gift into business entertainment. And there is no strict, hard-coded dollar limit on business entertainment.
Wait, really? $1,000 is fine just because he's sitting there?
It is permissible, provided it's reasonable and customary. The theory is that if the broker is physically present, they are actively building a business relationship, having a conversation, assessing needs. If the broker just hands over tickets and leaves, it's an unearned bribe.
If you are there, it's entertainment. If you aren't, it's a gift. Remember the Taylor Swift presence test. What about money flowing the other direction? Non-cash compensation. Mutual fund companies trying to incentivize retail brokers.
This used to be a massive systemic problem. A wholesaler would call Barry and say, hey, sell $2 million of our aggressive growth fund by December 31st, and we'll fly you and your spouse first class to the Bahamas for a week.
And Barry says, my wife loves the Bahamas. So the next day, an 85-year-old widow who needs safe treasury bonds gets aggressively pitched the growth fund because Barry needs to hit his quota.
Exactly. Barry has abandoned his fiduciary duty to win a prize. FINRA strictly prohibits these all-expense-paid trips tied to the sale of specific securities or specific product lines.
But firms can still have in-house sales contests, right? Monica can still reward her top brokers.
Yes, but it must be based on the broker's total overall production across all product lines.
So Barry can win the trip by being a great broker overall, whether he sells mutual funds, bonds, or stock. He isn't pressured to push one specific fund over another. This protects the client. Total production versus specific product sales. Highly testable. Let's pivot to politics. Section 5, the $250 mistake, pay-to-play rules.
We are looking at MSRB Rule G37 and FINRA Rule 2030. The MSRB is the Municipal Securities Rulemaking Board. They write the rules for the municipal bond market, city, and state debt.
What does pay-to-play mean? It's about Wall Street firms trying to buy incredibly lucrative municipal bond underwriting deals from local politicians.
Decades ago, Wall Street executives would make massive 6-figure campaign donations to the re-election campaigns of mayors or city treasurers. In exchange, that politician would magically decide that the executive's firm should get the billion-dollar bond underwriting contract, generating millions in fees.
Legalized bribery. So regulators severed the tie between political money and municipal contracts. They created a sweeping prohibition on firms doing business with municipalities if they made political contributions. But they created a loophole, the de minimis exception.
The small amount exception. A municipal finance professional can donate up to $250 per election. So Barry can donate $250 in the primary and $250 in the general.
But listener, here is the massive trap. You can only donate up to $250 to an official that you are entitled to vote for, meaning they have to be running in the district where you actually live. Let's use our characters. Barry lives in Town A. He's registered to vote there. Mayor Mike is the mayor of Town B, 5 miles away. Barry goes to a fundraiser for Mayor Mike and writes a personal check for just $10, $10, way under the $250 limit. What happens when compliance finds out?
A total disaster. Because Barry lives in Town A, he cannot legally cast a ballot for Mayor Mike in Town B. He is not entitled to vote for him. So the $250 de minimis exception does not apply at all. His legal limit is $0.
So what's the penalty for a $10 check? A fine?
No. The penalty is devastating. It hits the entire firm. Because of that $10 check, manager Monica's entire brokerage firm is slapped with a mandatory 2-year ban on engaging in any negotiated municipal securities business with Town B.
2 years. The whole firm. If Town B was going to issue a $100 million bond next month, Monica's firm is legally disqualified. They lose out on millions in fees over $10.
This is a strict liability penalty. Monica cannot say, "We had no idea Barry wrote that check from his personal account. The regulators do not care. The ban is automatic." And there's a 2-year look-back period. If Barry writes the check, then gets a job at a new firm 6 months later, he brings the radioactive cloud with him. His new firm inherits the remaining 18 months of the ban.
You cannot outrun pay to play. You must know the $250 limit, the entitled to vote condition, and the 2-year firm ban.
Yeah.
Okay, take a breath. Home stretch. Section 6, the 30-day ticking clock. We've talked about all these chaotic events, complaints, arrests, bankruptcies. How does FINRA find out?
FINRA Rule 4530.
Reportable events require affirmative, prompt reporting by the firm. Think of it like a 400-meter relay race. There's a baton of information.
Let's say Barry gets an IRS tax lien. He's holding the baton. What does he do?
Barry has an obligation to promptly hand the baton to his firm. He must walk into Monica's office and disclose the lien. He passed the baton. His individual duty is complete.
Now Monica has the baton. How long does she have to sprint to the finish line, which is FINRA's database? She has exactly 30 calendar days to file the formal report with FINRA, and the clock starts from the date the firm knows or should have known about the event.
Should have known. If the background check software flags it, the clock starts even if Barry is silent. What if someone drops the baton? Barry gets the lien, hides it, never tells Monica.
Barry dropped the baton on the first leg. He is hit with a severe rule violation for failure to report.
But what if Barry does the right thing, hands Monica the paperwork, but Monica accidentally buries it under a stack of files and forgets to file it until 45 days later?
The firm dropped the baton on the final leg. The firm is hit with a violation and a fine. And listener, what is vital to understand is that the failure to report is treated as a separate and distinct violation from the underlying event.
Oh, wow. Explain that.
Going back to the felony assault charge, the charge is bad. But if Barry intentionally hides it, he is prosecuted for 2 offenses: the underlying conduct and the cover-up. Regulators treat the cover-up much more harshly because it demonstrates a deliberate intent to subvert the system.
It's the old adage. It's not the crime, it's the cover-up that gets you. Remember the written complaint? The furious midnight text message alleging over $5,000 in damages triggers the same 30-day relay race. Same with bankruptcy, criminal charges, getting fired. 30 days. Okay, we've covered a massive amount of ground. It is time for the final rapid-fire recap. Pure, highly testable concentrate. Think about why these answers are what they are. Ready? Form U5 termination filing.
30 days. The firm needs time to ensure the narrative is legally accurate.
Threshold for a written customer complaint.
$5,000. And merit does not matter. The allegation forces the disclosure.
OBA versus selling away.
OBA is non-securities work, requires prior written notice. Compensated selling away requires notice, approval, and full firm supervision.
Gift limit.
$100 per person per year in aggregate. Unless the Taylor-Swift rule applies and you attend the event, then it's business entertainment with no strict dollar limit.
Pay-to-play limit.
$250. But it only applies if you can legally vote for the official. A $10 donation to the wrong town triggers a 2-year ban for the entire firm.
Brilliant. If you can mentally justify the logic behind those 5 answers, you are going to crush this section.
Before we wrap up, I want to leave you with a final concept to mull over. We started this talking about the schoolyard myth of the permanent record. But consider the terrifying permanence of the digital footprint in this industry. A single bad decision, a bankruptcy, an arrest, one frivolous complaint, it doesn't just fade away. It becomes a permanent public tattoo, a digital scarlet letter that any future client or employer can view instantly. It raises a profound philosophical question. With the absolute transparency required by FINRA today, is the modern financial professional ever truly allowed to make a mistake and move on?
That is a heavy thought, but it underscores exactly why you need to know the mechanics of these rules. You aren't just memorizing to pass a test. You are learning this to protect your career and your livelihood. So, take a deep breath. Trust the material. Visualize Barry and Monica. Apply these rules to the practice exams on CertFuel and keep crushing your SIE prep. You've got this. We'll see you on the next deep dive.